Copper is both the problem and the opportunity right now. The most important conductor of electricity is hitting record prices, and a technology is emerging to replace it. I'm Matt Miller. I cover metals and mining at CFRA. Today, we're connecting two reports that might look like separate stories, but they're really two sides of the same trade.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angelo Zino, and I lead up the tech team here at CFRA. And my primary area of focus is on the chip side of things. For the sake of this conversation, I'll first pass it over to Matt, who can set the stage here as far as his outlook on copper demand and supply.
Yeah, I mean, the bull case for copper is really straightforward. Demand is coming really from everywhere all at once. AI data centers, electric vehicles are now topping 20 million units in 2025. And we see a massive wave of grid modernization. And the problem is supply simply can't keep up. Average ore grades are down 40% since 1991. The average mine takes nearly 18 years from discovery to production. And we're forecasting a 200,000 ton deficit in the global copper trade in 2026, which should widen to around 2.5 million tons by 2030. And that's roughly 8% of projected global demand. And that kind of shortfall cannot be solved through inventory drawdowns. Our 2026 average price forecast is $6.25 per pound. And we think the prices could reach $8 to $10 a pound by 2028 to 2030.
And I'll touch upon the tech side of things here. So, when we think about copper, it is becoming less viable in the data center as we kind of see, bandwidth requirements really increase, and we hit some physical limitations here over the next 2 to 3 years. So specifically, when you look at NVIDIA's shift to optics, that'll be really a key driver for the industry as we start to migrate to its new Ruben Ultra architecture. And that's going to be in late 2027, where they shift more to this hybrid approach between copper and optical, was essentially the use of lasers. Ultimately, NVIDIA's Feynman platform, and that's more of a 2028 story, that's going to be an all-in on optical connectivity. So NVIDIA right now making some big investments in optical companies like a Marvell, Lumentum, as well as others to kind of prepare for this moment, looking ahead over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think that the part that I want to make sure doesn't get lost is, we actually did the math on this, and you might hear that the data centers are replacing copper with optics and assume that's bearish for copper. But about 75% of copper in the data center is infrastructure, transformers, switch gears, and cables and cooling systems. And photonics cannot touch any of that. So it's the high-speed interconnect layers that optics does displace. And so that's maybe 5 to 10% of the copper inside of a data center facility, and well under 0.5% of global demand. And so, consensus estimates are that data center copper demand is still rising from about 800,000 tons this year to around 1.3 to 1.4 million tons by 2028. And so when we look at that, we still see a bullish outlook for copper.
As far as what we're watching, it continues to be a demand-driven story, which is going to be all about CapEx spend. And right now, as we kind of look at the CapEx trajectory, that looks very favorable going into 2027 and even on a 2028 perspective. Also, as far as the shift here on the optical connectivity side of things, it's going to be really important to make sure execution plays itself out going into the next year or two. 2027 is going to be a complete infrastructure shift. So there are going to be a lot of moving parts to make sure this fully works itself out. So there's a risk and opportunity here as far as the migration towards optical connectivity. I'd also say, as far as names that we do like the most in the space, I would point to companies like a Coherent, Corning, Lumentum, Marvell, and Broadcom, among others.
And looking at the implications for equities on the copper side, First Quantum is our top pick, strong buy. The balance sheet has been transformed, and Cobre Panama is a key mine that just really offers upside. We also highlight Freeport-McMoRan as a buy, as the world's largest publicly traded copper producer, and Grasberg ramping up towards full capacity by year-end 2027. And Angelo, what are you looking for over the next 6 to 12 months that investors should keep an eye out for?
For us, it continues to be that CapEx spend trajectory again. And our view is this is going to be an enormous year. We're looking for anywhere from 80 to 100% growth when the year is said and done in terms of CapEx spends. And that's going to continue, we think, to build into 2027, 2028. We're thinking, growth rates start moderating towards about 25 to 30%, but still very healthy growth trajectory. And driven by that also is, hey, listen, you build more and more data centers, you will continue to need copper at different aspects of that infrastructure build. So very bullish, I'd say, both on the semi side of things, and still a positive, I'd say, as far as the copper thesis is concerned. And maybe I'll throw the same question back to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, over the next 6 months, I think investors should be watching the Grasberg ramp at Freeport. And, this has happened over the second half of 2026. And when that mine gets back towards full capacity and the market still can't close a supply deficit, that's when I think we approach the 2.5 million ton annually. And that's when $8 a pound copper might start sounding conservative.
Sounds good. And I think that's all we've got. So for those interested, feel free to hop on marketscopeadvisor.com and read our thoughts within those underlying thematics.